Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. This show is brought to you by Flatiron's Tuning, your source for any aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts. Be sure to check out our store at flatironstuning.com and stay tuned with Flatiron's Tuning.
Well, welcome back, everybody. This is episode 92 of the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. We've got Dussex and Tasso joining us today, and we've got another special guest. We have got Miss Heather Holler joining us. And Heather, I actually stumbled across your profile on LinkedIn, and what grabbed my attention is WRC Mechanic. That was kind of the title. And I reached out because you'd said something like you were coming back to the States, and we were able to find some time to sit down and chat with you. And suffice to say, we have questions. We want to hear all about what it's like to work in the WRC and all of that. So first and foremost, just thank you so much for making the time to chat with us. Really appreciate it.
Hell yeah, dude, no problem.
And just right at the front, if people, like if they listen to this and they want to follow you or see what you're up to, what is the best place to find you, to stay up on what you're up to these days?
Instagram is best, and it's
Okay.
at Miss Shift with an underscore between the Miss and the Shift. It's MISS.
Which is a very, very awesome Instagram handle, by the way.
Thank you. My
Yes.
my best buddy in tech school gave me that one. So.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe just right at the beginning, let's start at the beginning. How did you get involved in working on cars? Like what was that initial motivation?
I beat my boyfriend at the time in an autocross race. Kind of.
Okay.
That's kind of how it started. I was just kind of floating around, didn't know what I was
Yeah.
doing with myself after high school. I had actually lived in Germany once before already. I was 19 and I thought I was going to be a professional soccer player. I was supposed to
Okay.
try out for the women's Nuremberg team, had an injury, came back to the US, and we went to an autocross event. And my dad always said you knew what you wanted to do when it gave you the goosebumps. And I
Mhm.
got the goosebumps. Like it was just so fun. It was so cool. So I sold my SUV 2 weeks later and bought my little Subaru. So
Okay.
um, I just I had, yeah, just really enjoyed working on the cars. I kind of had to do it out of necessity because I was broke.
Sure.
So,
Sure.
but when I did that, I was like, this is actually kind of cool. I would like to go to school for it. So
Okay.
I went to UTI, found a job 6 months into school as a Subaru apprentice at a dealership. And that's when I learned about rally racing.
Okay.
Yeah. And the Subaru has like a Drive Performance magazine.
Hmm.
And that's when I learned about Vermont sports car.
Yeah.
So I basically spent the next 5, 6 years working at Subaru, and I started privateer crewing for a summer a little bit just to try to get some experience. Somehow managed to land a job interview in Los Angeles with the team.
Okay.
Drove 9 hours one way for a job interview.
Wow.
So, yeah.
This is a rally team?
Yeah, this is a Subaru
Okay.
rally team.
Super
Yep,
rally team.
yep,
Okay.
yep.
Very cool.
Who
And
was
that's
what was the team you were doing mechanic work for first?
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I worked with like Eric Wages and Gino when he was alive. And then there was the Rally Kings one time. Oh my God, I feel awful because I'm forgetting his name. But there's a gentleman, I believe, he's a driving instructor based out of Vegas. And
Vegas.
he had a Chevy Sonic. Um, I think that's about it. I only
Oh,
did like a handful.
was that Pat
Uh,
Morrow?
no,
No.
Ron
Okay.
Fellows?
no. No. Ray Piloto.
Oh yeah. Right.
Piloto.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, that was an interesting one because it was out in Utah, and I guess it was like the first year they tried to have a rally, and like something happened with permits, and I had to cancel.
Oh.
So everybody
Yeah.
went out there, did recce and everything, and nope.
I remember hearing something about that. Yeah.
Yep,
It
that was, yep.
There's a crazy amount of
Where
paperwork when it comes to setting up a rally, it turns out.
Yeah, I imagine.
Especially here in the States. Yeah.
where were you based at the
Yeah.
time? Because it sounds like, I mean, Rally Kings are SoCal. Were you in
Yeah, I
SoCal? Or you
was.
said you drove 9 hours. So where are you from?
Yeah, I grew up in Lake Tahoe on the North Shore.
Okay,
Okay.
So
cool.
yeah, playing in the desert.
Nice.
Sure.
Well, and so then you got really involved with rally at that point, and was like, I was wondering about this because like when you're a mechanic, that's kind of like a solitary thing, because usually, especially working at a dealership, you've got your bay, you're just like, you have your stuff to do, and you just like you're just flagging tickets, you're working on cars, you're doing your own thing. Then
Mhm.
rally, it's like it's kind of the polar opposite of that because there's a team involvement there. And I think some mechanics can deal with that and some mechanics can't quite deal with that. So how did you transition into that team environment?
So I always grew up being part of some sort of a team. Playing soccer, I was ski raced and I was on swim team and track and field. So like even though it's an individual, like they're mostly individualized sports, like it's still somewhat of like a team effort as well. And I always enjoyed being part of a team. So honestly, for me, it was a really nice transfer over because I didn't like having to work alone and I like learning from other people a lot. But for me, I feel like the most difficult thing about like motorsport, and it's not even just for mechanics, but anyone involved in motorsport, especially like the higher levels that you go, oh my God, it's such a mentally taxing job. And you really have to be almost more mentally strong than like physically. Like it's wild. Like I've worked with guys that used to be like contractors, DJs, cooks, and they're
Hmm,
mechanics or rally mechanics because there's a mindset that you have to have
hmm.
about it. So
Especially at that
it's
at that higher level, as the stakes kind of get higher. Like I'm guessing that the tension, the stress kind of builds the higher level you get to.
yeah, that's definitely for sure. I mean, there's a lot more on the line. There's a lot more money involved. At that level, you're paying your drivers instead of them paying you. You know
Right.
what I mean? So
Yeah.
there's, and if you don't do well, you don't get sponsors, and then you don't get a paycheck. So it's kind of scary because you have to be passionate about it, but at the same time, people always warn you, don't get into your passion because you'll lose it. So it's a
Hmm.
mental balance that I think you have to have.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably being a mechanic and then working on rally cars for fun or in your free time, and then moving into now that environment is your paycheck, that is your job, that is the environment that you're spending like a lion's share of your time in. I imagine that probably was just a transition in and of itself.
Oh yeah, well, it's your own stuff, you don't have deadlines. I mean, like sometimes we have 3 days to tear a car apart and completely build it back together. So like
Wow.
it's definitely a different atmosphere in the workshop at that level for sure.
Well, and maybe let me see if I have this progression close right and correct me here. But did you start working at Vermont Sports Car, like as far as like the professional teams? It went from Vermont Sports Car, then to DirtFish, and
Mhm.
then to the Hyundai WRC team. Is that right?
Yeah, for the most part, I did a little
Okay.
bit of FD. I worked with RTR and like Von Gittin Jr. a little bit when I first moved
Okay.
down to North Carolina, but other than that, it's mostly been rally and rallycross.
Okay. And I guess now kind of coming out of like your current phase, are you do you still love it? Do you still enjoy it? Do you kind of miss it and kind of want to still be involved with it, or are you ready for like a break?
Yes to everything.
Yes. Okay.
Well, so unfortunately, before I left Germany, I actually, when we were tearing apart Oliver's car for the rebuild, he had a pretty bad wreck at the last rally. And so I was a little too complacent. And the damper I was taking out, you have to be careful when you take these cars apart after they wreck because everything is bent and like under tension. So like shit starts popping off everywhere, And so it happened that the clip for the top of the damper was broken. So when I took the nut off, the whole spring just exploded on the top of my foot. So I've
Oh,
been stuck in my flat in Germany for like 3 weeks doing nothing, going crazy. So I've had my rest.
okay. Okay.
I'm good. I'm good.
Man, it just
So
took 3 weeks to recover. Yeah.
Yeah. What's
through all
that?
these stops with these different teams, have you always been a race mechanic? Have you been involved in the engineering process, car development, or just been turning wrenches the whole time, or what?
I've just mostly been a mechanic. When I was with DirtFish for, I think it was the first year, I don't know, I think ARX was only like a thing for a couple seasons, but one of those seasons, I think outside of being the mechanic, I took care of the fleet of cars for DirtFish. And so when you have the haulers in your driveway and there's more to just the mechanics, you have the logistics and stocking the trucks and all that crap. But other than that, no, I did decide to try to go back to school and get my mechanical engineering degree. And
Cool.
I don't know what I was thinking, but I did that when I went to Germany.
Oh.
And somehow managed to get through my first semester. But honestly, I think COVID kind of helped because we were forced to quarantine a lot. So I had time for the schoolwork. And this last year, there's no fucking way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's no way. So now that I'm home, I'm going to try to get back on track for that because I just think even if I don't decide to do design or engine whatever, it'll just make me a better mechanic anyways. So
Sure. Well, and maybe just as you started progressing into that professional level, maybe what is the role of a mechanic? So what is your focus? What are you guys tasked with doing? And maybe kind of like fill out that role.
So depending on the team and the budgets and all that stuff, basically the mechanics are there to, I hate to say it, but I kind of joke like we're glorified parts changers.
Okay.
Because like with these manufacturing teams, you have engineers that literally tell you, this is the gearbox we're putting in it. You have a gearbox department. They're the ones that handle rebuilding that. You have an engine department, you know, with Hyundai, you have steering and suspension. And like even on some of the cars, like we don't even touch the wiring, nothing. So we literally install all of the components, but when you do that, you know, you always have to check for clearances, make sure that you have no rubbing on lines, you know, hoses, harnesses. It's a very meticulous and detail-oriented job, which is why in a perfect world, you have all these separate departments so that you can strive for perfection in every little system of the car. Basically. Sure. So then after the races, they get crashed and banged up or whatever, and then you just bring them back, take them all apart, clean everything, inspect, replace, fix, whatever, and do it all again.
Wow. So it sounds like the engineering departments design the components, and then they hand them to you guys, and you guys have to figure out how to put them on the car and actually make them work.
Yeah, or say, this is not working. This is where you messed up. Here's your drawing. Do it better.
Right. Which I'm guessing, like when you get up to the WRC level, because of how bespoke those cars are, that probably is not that unusual to happen.
Well, I think I was a little lucky because I was able to kind of be a part of WRC during that transition from internal combustion to the hybrids.
Yep.
And so I spent all of last year kind of experiencing the process of designing a new chassis and a new car. And whereas when we were testing the W7, that's a chassis that they had for 5 years or something like that. So like for the most part, everything was really kind of where it needed to be anyways. But with this new chassis, I would like to think that we have a lot of this because it's a brand new chassis. So we're going to find a lot of places where we can improve, you know, and as a mechanic, it's your job to find where you can make things a little more simpler or lose weight, or you know, you still do have to be a little creative, but you don't need to know.
Sorry, you were there for the transition to the hybrid era. Sorry, my dogs are being crazy.
It's okay, I have one here.
Transition to the hybrid era, and then, you know, still currently with the team, you've seen the transition to the space frame cars too. I mean, that's a couple pretty significant rule changes and pretty significant, you know, retooling. I mean, I
like
don't know.
Everything.
Right.
Everything.
Yeah.
Like
but,
everything.
I mean, I can't imagine
that
learning curve and learning the whole new design of the cars and stuff like that, and the growing pains. You know, with
I'm trying to be as ethical as I can without like, yeah, you know what I mean, like sharing too much info, but everything is new. Like I mean, for the most part, everything was new. Like I think like the outside profiles of the gearboxes and engines, I think, are about the same, and that's about it, you know. So
Hmm.
like I think the biggest frustration though is like when you have been working for 5 years on a chassis, you get used to it, you know the ins and outs, and then when you have something dropped in your lap that's brand new, you know, there's always a little bit of a learning curve.
Yeah. Well, but
So
how much of a learning curve was like now the big electrical system with the hybrids? Because in the dealership environment, like there's some crazy rules. Like
I'm
if you
so
bring a
glad I don't work in a dealership anymore,
well,
honestly.
it's all for safety. You know, like there's a special like thing that has to sit on top of the car so that like okay, this is a hybrid, this is electrical. Like there's all of the wiring are like color coded. I think it's orange or yellow. There's like
Yeah.
special insulated tools that you have to use if you're going to work on it. But you're trying to do this in a race environment, in a service, in a. I mean, like,
Yeah,
was
I
that a change?
honestly, yeah, it's definitely a change, and I honestly think that it's still a change that even the FIA is trying to work out, you know, all of the little details. Like I feel like I think it was Craig Breen in Kenya had an off, and no one went to go like they couldn't touch the car because the light on it was like
Yeah,
I think
the little
blue. There
green
was
light.
something weird
Right.
going on with the light and people were nervous to touch the car or something like so I think it's a matter of like having even like spectators educated because that's what I love about rally. You go off and you have spectators that will drag
Right.
your car back onto the stage. It's so cool.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but even the spectators need to know about these systems because of this feature of this form of motorsport, you know?
Yeah.
So it's a learning curve for everybody. I think the most interesting experience I had with the batteries was um, so I worked mostly on the third car with that was shared between Danny and Oliver, and Oliver had gone off in Croatia, and the car caught fire, and it burned.
Oh.
It burned. And so we had to go recover the car at like midnight that night, and we had to remove the battery that night. So this car is completely charred, smells like ass, it's awful, and we had to wear the gloves
Hmm.
until we completely remove the battery. And these gloves are like 4 times the size of your hands. So you like,
Right.
I, there's
Wow.
no way. I think, I mean, yeah, there's a way. When there's a will, there's always a way. But
Right.
if
It was
anyone
not
has to
easy.
change one of those during a service, good fucking luck.
Yeah.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's probably only a matter of time before they figure out. Like, if I were to think about changing a transmission during a service, that blows my mind. You know, for even that to be possible, but that became common practice, right? Or the
Oh
ability
yeah,
to be able to
well,
do so, right?
that's the beauty about race cars. They're supposed to be easy to work on for that
Right.
reason. You know,
Yeah.
and I
Supposed to
think
be.
honestly, yeah, supposed to be. That's the,
Yeah.
the trick. There's a YouTube video, and it's called Gearbox the Movie. I think it's 9 minutes long. And it's from back in the 80s, I think like Group B era. And there is a gearbox change on the side of the road. I think it looks like the Middle East somewhere. And they do it on an Audi in like 9 minutes. And it's like,
Wow.
you know, the cars back then are a lot more difficult, you know. So like them doing that, and I'm sorry, that was just wild to me.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we can do it in our cars, I think a little less than that, but
Yeah.
back then with no power tools, that's
Yeah.
insane. I'm sorry, that's wild.
Hmm.
Man.
There's a video from a few years back before the hybrid era, and I can't forget who it was, but it's one of the mainstay names who had a pretty good off and rolled. And he comes cruising back into service. He gets the car going again, and he gets the quick, check. The cage is good to go, so they go to work on it to get it re-prepped. And the amount of, I mean, they do a full rear subframe with both rear corners, new panels, new doors, like the whole nine, and they play the entire service in entirety, like, 20-minute service or whatever it was in this video. And holy smokes, what they do to this car! It's
We
I'm
had something similar happen in Kenya, and I don't know how the hell we did it, but we did it. I think we had like 10 mechanics on the car at once. And like
Wow.
right before the service, we have, because every time the car before it comes in, you kind of have like a crew meeting. So, I mean, for the most part, every person on the corner has their designated job. And then there's like a workflow, so like you start in your corner, out to in, and then rear to front if you're on the rear, front to back if you're on the front. But so everybody was literally given these little tasks to be as efficient and quick as possible. And like we did welding and like, I think we did like a front subframe or rear, I don't know, I have it written down somewhere because it was fucking wild. Like I kind of cried a little bit at the end, to be honest, because it was so impressive. But it's freaking wild, honestly, what you can do if you really put your mind to it.
So what was your
Yeah.
role with these teams? I mean, I'm sure you had different assignments over the years, but like, so what are some roles that stood out to you, and what's
So
been your favorite role?
Okay, so I started out working on the test team, and I love, honestly, like it's hard to say if I love the testing more than the racing,
Hmm.
because when I started working for the Subaru Rally team, I thought I was going to be working in rally, and they put me in the rallycross program.
Sure.
So then I did that for also 4 more seasons with DirtFish. So like this is kind of like my first real rally experience. And last season, we would test in one day what the drivers do in one rally. And we would do that for 3, 4, 5 days in a row. And I liked it because there's no downtime. It's kind of like rallycross. The car goes out, comes back, and you do this for 12, 16, 18 hours a day. And so I like being busy, like downtime kind of kills me.
Now,
So I really, really like that aspect of it.
can you just elaborate on that a little bit? So you're saying like effectively run a stage rally miles in one day, and then just the cars back and forth, and so you're servicing the car in that testing period?
Yeah. We usually
Okay.
like for each day we have like a designated area that we test. And if I remember correctly, every team is allowed like a certain number of testing days. And then you're also allowed to test as many times as you want at your home base. So actually, Hyundai decided that we're going to have our home base in Finland,
Oh.
where Toyota is. So we
Mhm.
can test as many times as we want up in Finland, but you only have a certain number of days anywhere else.
Okay.
So the FIA will actually help you set up these dates and roads and shit like this so
Mhm.
that you can do proper testing. But yeah, we will literally just do a section of a stage back and forth, back and forth, back and forth
Okay.
for all day.
Wow. And you guys are on call, and just anything and everything that happens, get the car back together so you can continue the test.
Yeah, and I like the test team. I mean, because we don't have to fix a car in a certain time like the race team,
Mm.
but at the same time, like we don't have a big giant fancy building. Like we're on the side of the road and the elements, and I kind of like that shit, so I don't mind it. But you're forced to be a little bit more creative with what you have.
Mm.
And because on top of like, I mean, we're in the middle of nowhere on a lot of these stages, whereas the service park for rallying is usually in a bigger populated city or town or something like this. So if you need something, you can go buy it, but not when you're
Mm.
testing.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
I
You
think
gotta bring it
it
with you.
kind of it pushes you a little bit more to kind of get creative and problem solve a little bit more than on the race team. But the race
Mm.
team is a way different environment. It's
Right.
more of a mental game.
So what time frame were you in the rallycross program with Vermont Sports Car? Because I got a friend that used to work there, Winston Hale. I'm just trying to see if you guys made a cross pass. He was in chassis development at Vermont Sports Car.
2016 was when I
Uh,
worked with
I
Vermont
think
Sports
I
Car.
think he was gone by then. But so like the early,
Yeah.
like the hatch cars, he was a large part of the development of those. So
Oh, cool. Okay.
I was
Hell
gonna try
yeah.
and figure out if there was anything he developed to make your guys' life hell on the mechanic side.
Oh gosh.
So I could go
Don't
back and
do
get him
that.
with it. But
We'll
yeah,
call you the shit stirrer master chef.
there we go.
Yeah,
Just trying to stir some shit up.
man. Well, and when you guys are doing all that testing, I mean, I'm guessing that like you have a vested interest in it, because you have whatever happens in an event on stage, like that, if they lost the back half of the car and they found like a donkey cart or something that they put onto the back, and they somehow roll in with the horse pulling the car into service. You're like, all right, you got 20 minutes to make it work again. Go. Like, so you have a vested interest in figuring out like how to make the car more reliable, how to, help ensure that like the drivers are happy with the car, and maybe even refine your technique to get the car put back
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, that and like, the engineers are always working on their systems that they're assigned to, so they're always trying to better what they work on. So they'll give it to us, we'll throw it on the car or whatever it is, and see if it works better, worse, the same,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
just kind of do that. But I think, I don't know, it's really, I love it because we give the data to the race team to go off of.
Okay.
We give them what gear ratios that the drivers decide that they like the best, or suspension setups, roll bar position, stuff like that. Like it's you can't set up your race car until the test team is done testing to give you that information.
Because you need that starting point. You need like the ratios, or what are the suspension settings? What do you need to focus on?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
What drivers have the most ridiculous setups that they like? Like, is there some driver that they're like, I don't know how this guy drives his car so loose like this, but
So, because this year I've been mostly confined to like one or two, one car basically. I couldn't really tell you, but I can tell you that I know Danny on the W7 chassis last year, he had a really wild weight ballast in a spot that is not in a place like our other drivers, and the ballast was so freaking heavy that even the boys needed two people to take it out, so like it's what, yeah, so that was a little strange.
so
Yeah.
it was weird that he had so much, or was it in a different location than normal?
It's just, I think it was because it was so much in such a weird spot. I just think he liked the way that it made the car react, to his inputs. So
Okay.
it was, when you're loading up, it's like, oh, don't forget Danny's shit, So.
Right.
Yeah. Huh.
How funny.
250 pounds duct taped onto the roof.
Right.
Right, basically. And
Yeah.
no, as low as possible.
Yeah, sure.
Right. Right.
Huh.
How
How
funny.
does Oliver like his car set up? I mean, because he's a pedigreed driver essentially, right? It's in his blood. He's got a lot of history, but he's still young and developing still as a driver. So is there anything about his setup or something that kind of, like, does he like a loose car?
I think Oliver is still kind of trying to figure that out himself.
Hmm.
It's his first year in a Rally 1 car, and like and from behind the scenes, like it's like, oh, our team is such a freaking nightmare. Everything is, but at the same time, like you meet people from other teams, and we're not like sharing technical information, but like it seems like behind the scenes with these other guys too, everybody is still trying to learn and figure these damn cars out, to be honest. Like
Sure.
I think seems like there is a common theme about like the rear of the car trying to come out on our cars, but I think maybe Oit and Thierry have different opinions about this, and so it's I think everyone, honestly, with these chassis, they're still trying to find the sweet spot.
So that it's really that much of a handling difference then going to the space frame
these
cars.
cars are so different, They're way more complicated than last year's. There's there's a whole new system that's introduced that you have to accommodate. So
Yep.
it's a whole new learning curve for everybody. Yeah.
I'm sure we're flirting with, industry secrets and team secrets and NDAs and stuff like that right now. So I'm trying to find a way to word these.
Right. And I'm trying to find a way to not flirt with them.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's honestly, like it's just a learning curve for everybody. Like I think that like on the outside, it's like, yeah, we know what we're doing. It's all good. And on the inside, we are losing our shit.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same with Toyota, with M Sport. Like it's
Sure.
everyone is.
Well, it's all new.
What I've gathered, it's everybody is learning how to deal with this shit. So
it's exciting though.
from a mechanical's perspective, how involved are you if they're trying to solve this like big picture problem with the car? Are the mechanics like, are you right in there with them trying to solve it, or are you
A
kind
little
of,
bit.
do they kind of keep you guys on the outside?
Well, the thing is like they only see a problem based on the data that they get. And
Hmm.
so there's sensors and inputs all over these cars, so like they can see a lot of like the performance aspect sides, but like we have the visual, so like when the car comes in and you see underneath that there was a huge impact somewhere, it's probably going to be in your best interest to pull that guard off and have a look and see if there's anything broken or damaged, because you could have a pinched wire even though
Yeah.
nothing's really broken. And that's the data that they're seeing, so they think, oh, it's fucked, we got to replace the gearbox, when
No, it's just a
it's
bad
not really
sensor,
a
bad
broken
wire.
gearbox.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in that situation, you would probably, just for time constraint, you would probably still replace the gearbox, but at least okay, we just repaired this wire or something.
Okay.
Still pretty
You
wild.
know that the gearbox is okay.
Even just for that sentence to come out in that situation, you would probably just replace the gearbox.
Right.
That's a wild thing for a one-person crew amateur motorsports guy to consider.
Well, and
Yeah.
what one informs the other, and that's what I was most excited about talking about, is to find out what it's like at this very high level, where kind of like you have an insane amount of people and it's seemingly an insane budget to kind of throw at the system. But I figure like you guys probably figure out, like, you distill down like what are the real priorities, where does the time and energy really need to go, and I would guess that maybe some of that distillation would apply to more privateer teams or more independent teams, because that's like whatever those pain points are, whatever like the really high priority things that you need to focus on, that ostensibly would be the same for most everybody.
So basically, what will happen, like when the drivers are done with a stage, a lot of the times our engineers will be on the phones with the co-drivers, and the co-drivers will say, okay, because you have a screen with all of your gearbox temps and your data, so they will share this information. They will also share whether or not they used the paper towels that we put in there. Maybe if they had a flat and they used, like, we have air bottles, that they can put air in or something, so we at least have a heads up of what to prepare in the service area.
Hmm.
Another cool thing that I experienced that I didn't really know about until I started racing on the race team was like this flexi service. And so basically a flexi service is you're given, let's just say, 40 minutes. You don't necessarily have to start working on that car when it comes into the service. So what we do is we let all of our cars come in. You cannot touch the cars, and you walk around, and then you have even more time to assess the damage. And then you have a team manager that will decide, okay, this car starts at this time for 40 minutes, and then this car, and then this car, because in a flexi service, if you can do this, then you can steal the mechanics from the other car crews.
Hmm.
So if there's a lot of damage, then you can have these services spaced out to where you can pull the mechanics from the other cars. So in a flexi service, you have more time to analyze the car and look before it's go time, basically.
Right.
So when you do start the service, based on what the engineer and the driver and co-drivers have decided, you do already have a bit of a set list. And then as you do this, anytime you see any sort of damage, you tell your number one, I've got something going on here. What do you think? Should I repair it? Should I replace it? Whatever. And then they make the decisions to do that. And at the end of the service, you kind of get back together. You say, this is what I did on my corner. This is what I did. And then you have almost like a service report that we give to the engineers.
You kind of mentioned that some of the people that were on the cruise like had a background like as chefs or in restaurants, and like what you just said, like your number one guy, is it kind of like that where you've like in a kitchen environment where you've got like different hierarchies and people are focused on things, and then there's kind of like a higher level, like the main chef that's kind of
Yeah, I would
directing
like to
everything?
think so. I've never worked in a kitchen. I barely work in my own kitchen.
Sure.
Like my husband cooks. But I would assume, so like, for example, because of the new chassis, like me and my axle mate, I was on the rear right, he was on the rear left. So we kind of came up with our own plan of, okay, so if we have to replace the diff, you do this, I'm going to do this, then together we can do this. And so the more experienced mechanics tend to be on the front with the engine. There's a little bit more shit going on up
play,
there, Yeah. So, you have someone that is kind of more or less in charge of the inside of the car. So everybody does have their own little jobs, but you still have the main chief mechanic that you explain, this is what I found, what do you want me to do?
Okay.
I mean, there are situations where you see something and you just replace it, or fix it, and then you tell them later, like, it's not a big deal. But if you have a question about it, because you also have to be aware that there are parts that are tagged to these cars. So the damper, they have tags that you're only designated to use these certain dampers before the rally if it's part of the scrutineering process. So like as long as there's not very many brackets, shit like this, that's not tagged, but I mean it's still something to be aware of.
Right. Probably because they don't want you to like steal parts from like car number 3 to ensure the car number 1 can actually finish when it's something like they don't want you to be able to like cannibalize a car in that way.
Kind of, yeah. And like, because I think so many rules. If I remember correctly, I think that for each car, you have a rotation of like 2 engines and gearboxes and diffs. And for a certain number of rallies, those are the ones that you have to use.
Right.
So you still also kind of have to be strategic about when you replace some of these things as well. And it's a big strategy game too.
Yeah.
It's pretty impressive.
Once they started limiting the amount of mechanical components, like it's not those days where, hey, something might have gone wrong. I just put in a new engine and transmission just because we have unlimited supply, just go. And now once you have to kind of make them last a certain period of time. Yeah, I imagine like the strategy, like the emphasis on like checking fluids and like analyzing fluids and stuff became really significant because you've got to try and get the maximum use out of every component.
Yeah, especially with the testing, like you can change things out but there are a lot of times too where you purposely try to break stuff and see where the breaking point is. Like, let's break a gearbox today. Let's see where.
To see what breaks in the gearbox.
Also, that's what
where
you
the
do,
weak
right?
points are.
Yeah.
Not what I do. It's not on purpose.
Oh no!
No. I mean, I did hit a wall with those new Cusco dampers just to check to make sure that was good, but
totally.
that was not.
Yeah. Well, and just like, I mean, I'm guessing that like, is there a balance between performance and reliability? Is that even a consideration?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh
I mean,
yeah.
that's the whole deal, right?
God.
That's
Yeah,
race cars in a
absolutely.
nutshell,
Because
right?
I mean, yeah, usually the more durable something is, the more heavy it is, but you're trying to have a performance advantage. So it's like, where's the fine point, and whether you have fasteners that are easier to use than others, but maybe they're not as reliable. So it's like, fuck, which ones? Yeah.
Was it Chris
process.
Duckworth, maybe, the Formula One engineer from the?
Why does that name ring a bell?
I mean, famous Formula One engineer, I think, from the UK,
That's
one of
gotta
the
be
teams there where they all are. But he has this famous quote about, if a motor, like ideally the motor, falls apart at the finish line, because if it, lasts longer than that, then it was too heavy or it could have been pushed harder. I'm paraphrasing, but it was something like that. I mean,
yeah, it makes sense. That's for
race
sure.
cars in a nutshell.
I think that he is mentioned. I read the book How to Build a Race Car by Adrian Newey.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where I know that name from then.
Yeah, it would be the same crowd and
yeah.
Man.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
It's something where like it's interesting that you guys are dealing with the same problems at a high level than we are at a lower level, but I'm guessing they have more like options and more ability to like in testing. Like I said, we're just going to break a gearbox to see what the weak link is, and then we're going to fix that, and then we're going to break it again to see what the second weak link is. Then we're going to put the first weak link back in so that we know that if that goes, then maybe this thing is also needs to be replaced.
Yeah, so basically. We try to save the crash tests until the last day.
I bet.
But sometimes they happen regardless.
Wow.
You never know. Yeah, I think it was Sweden. We were like, okay, Oliver, the last run, you're going to throw it into the snowbank and just see what happens. And I think it was like the second to the last run, and he accidentally threw it into the snowbank.
Man.
So we got to finish our run early.
All right,
Yeah.
what information did you, if you can share, I don't know if this is a secret, but what information did you gather from your snowbank test? Did you find out what body parts come off, or what
I
bends, or?
found out how deep the snow can get.
Oh, okay.
I bet.
If you can't share, then just say I don't know. That's
it's
a trade
probably
secret.
best to not.
Okay.
It's not necessarily a trade secret. But, it's
Then
a
I
team
will
thing,
imagine.
and I think it's you can
I'll use my
imagine. I'm sure.
imagination to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like as far as like being a freelancer goes, it's a little bit of a you're not under contract like some of these people are. Like you still sign NDAs and stuff,
hmm
but you're not as heavily monitored, I think. And so it's still like it's like an ethical thing. Like you want to be respectful of the people
Sure.
that you've worked with before, you don't want to be known
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
for
I'm not trying to push you to
stabbing
no,
people in the back and
Right.
shit.
yeah. I'm not trying to push
Yeah.
you to share secrets,
No,
but
it's
it's
all
just that,
good. I mean,
I
you
mean,
can.
what
I won't.
the question I wanted to ask when we found out you're going to come on was, what's the coolest shit going on with these cars? And then immediately in my head, I was like, you can't talk about that. That's crazy. But that's what I want to know. Like, what could you tell me to make my car faster that these cars have? And I don't answer that because that's going to walk straight into the
Well,
trade
it's
secret
not.
kind of
Hybrid
stuff.
drivetrain, 4 EAT swap. I mean,
Boom.
sky's the limit, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Face
No,
frame.
honestly, like it's really kind of that's I think an overall answer question because I don't think it necessarily could pertain to this chassis specifically or the sport really. I think there's just a very basic formula for building a race car, and it's kind of like how we talked, weight versus reliability.
Yeah.
Right.
Where's the happy spot, and it's what makes me giggle is we are in the US and we have so much freedom to build some wild shit without being heavily restricted compared to a lot of parts of the world.
Sure.
And so you have the neighbor next door that's got some 1200 horsepower, whatever the hell, and they're oogling over these cars. Subaru team's rally cars only have 350 horsepower.
hmm
But it's the gear ratios that make them go and get there. And I think that is what a lot of people don't realize. Like for me, okay, high horsepower is really cool, but I like torque. So, and that's what gets you these,
Well,
you know what I mean? So
and
like
that's what the
I like being
hybrids did,
thrown in
right?
a seat. So yes.
So like just very broad, but do the drivers like the addition of the hybrid drivetrain? Like for rally application, it seems like there's a potential where, like with the turbo cars and before that, you're doing all these crazy tricks to try and get the low end torque, to try and get that wide power band and stuff. And now you have an electric motor that you can kind of just go do this, and you don't have to do all these anti-lag and crazy things to get that
Right.
behavior.
I mean, we still have anti-lag and all
Mhm.
that stuff. The thing with these cars is like I actually when I was living in Germany, I drove like a 24 or 48 volt like hybrid car as well. And like from what I would hear the drivers kind of talk about when you would feel the e-kit kind of kick in, it was very similar to my road car because it's
Hmm.
almost like it kicks in and you're not really ready for it in some spots. Like it's really weird. And so I think I mean you can even read all of this shit on DirtFish. They interview those guys all the
Mhm.
time, and I remember reading that it's some of the drivers are just it's finding that spot and being prepared for that extra push that's kind of throwing them off a little bit. And it
Sure.
did for me in my road car. So I think it's just the nature of the beast.
Right. Very cool. Well, all right. So I gotta ask you. You said you have a Subaru.
Yes.
Yes. Now let's say you have a Subaru rally car, and it's just you and maybe a couple of your friends that are running it. Now knowing what you know and having been through what you've been through, if you all of a sudden now are privateering a team and it's just you and a couple friends that are running this car, how would you approach it? How would you apply what you've learned from being at all these different levels to distill it down to that level?
Do it for fun.
Right.
Because sometimes it's not fun. Like
Mm.
sometimes the, I mean, and that's like I said before, when you're at that level, you have so much money on the line and whatever. But like, if I had my own rally team, I would ensure a a working environment that allows my employees, mechanics, whoever, to make sure that they're having a good time.
Mm.
When I worked with DirtFish, we were known as the fun crew in the paddock area, and I wholeheartedly believe that if you create an environment that is great to work in, the results show.
Mm.
Because, like, I love psychology, and I've taken a couple psychology classes, and it's really interesting to me, the psychology of why and how people think the way that they do. And I'm a really firm believer that as long as you have an environment and a vibe that is flowing, people get along with everybody, they want to help each other instead of this like not my job mindset. Like if you have that in a company, I think the results will come regardless.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean,
So
these are concepts that echo throughout time and history at any competition or any kind of environment where a team has to function together to create product or,
yeah, and
to create results.
like for me, I am a very bright and bubbly person.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I'm always giggling and laughing. And I've been accused of not taking my job seriously. And I have worked with teams where you have a very mundane, boring, almost like it's not even fun to be there anymore environment. And then you look at a situation like with DirtFish.
Mm.
And when I was with DirtFish, they were still very small. Like they weren't into WRC yet. Like people knew who they were, but like I don't, they didn't have the budget that a lot of these other teams do. But yet, as long as you have this environment that's welcoming and people want to be there, then you will create and accomplish so much more cool shit than just a big paycheck backing your project,
Sure.
to be completely honest.
Well, and it seems like, I mean, it's a high stress environment. I mean, I think
yeah,
it is a high stress environment. And like if that environment in and of itself is a torture test. And so
well,
like,
and that's why it's so important to have a harmonious working environment, is because naturally it's part of the game. You're under so much stress, and if you can do whatever you can as an employer to keep that level down,
mhm.
it will do your company wonders. Because I mean, if you're under constant stress, that shit will literally rot your brain. Like your brain shrinks. Like it's wild.
Well,
So
and two, I mean, you'd probably have way more turnover, and you guys have to work as a team. And I'm sure that like even if you picked 10 random mechanics from all the different teams, just a random assortment of mechanics that have never worked together, and you put them together on one car, they would probably be able to find a way to work together reasonably quickly, but it's not going to be as efficient as if you have the same 10 people that have been working on the same car for the last 5 years. Like there, you put those guys together, it's going to be automatic. So
yeah.
like there's an incentive to like keep the crew together to like foster that development.
And
But you have to let the environment keep the people too, or make it attractive.
exactly, and but that right there is also for me, it sucks because motorsport has like a really big like good old boys club, but at the same time, like you need to work with people that you trust.
Mm.
And so of course you're going to hire people that you know or that your friend recommends, because you have cars that are on these little tiny pin stands and who knows what kind of environment, and you need to make sure that you trust these people that you work with. Like luckily I'm able to do it by myself, but I had my guy up top one time slip, and the gearbox, I put a gearbox in by myself. You know, but you know, luckily I knew that this was just, it's just shit happens. Okay. But
Right.
if you have someone that you don't trust, then it's like, am I going to be prepared to do my job as well as I can?
Hmm.
Is this a forgetful person? Because
So
in the
do you have
high,
then, because a lot
go
of
for it,
other
sorry.
industries, I'm thinking about, like I'm a firefighter and we have this in our industry a lot. And so you get a culture like the testing each other out culture. Sometimes on the one extreme, it's hazing and stuff like that, which is, no one's really a fan of hazing, right? But at the same time, you poke at each other, you figure each other out. There's that healthy ribbing and stuff like that. You
Yep,
see the same
yep.
thing at a lot of industries that kind of have to have that innate trust in each other and also accountability to each other, kind of thing. So, did you guys do a lot of team building kind of stuff? Did you guys go, drinking and golfing or whatever? Or,
Hell
did
yeah.
you?
I mean, well, the thing is like when you I work with people from like over 50 countries from around the world, and we are all living in this little tiny little village, Alzenau.
Hmm.
There's nothing there, you know. I
Right.
mean, there's like miniature golf, but when you don't know locals and you don't really have very many friends, your friends are the people that you work with. So like they weren't really team building exercises, but yeah, we hang out with each other all the
Yeah,
freaking time,
right.
you know.
I
And
guess,
like it's European culture, having a beer, especially in Germany after work, is totally normal, or a glass of wine or
Hmm.
whatever, you know. So we're always drinking.
right.
Right.
Yeah, I guess team building exercise makes it sound like it's a corporate, mandate versus just hanging out and getting to know each other or something that's a
Yeah,
lot more natural.
yeah.
You should go on a circuit. Like you got a whole business, I think, just waiting for you, putting a book out and going to do like corporate talks about, how to make your company better from a WRC mechanic. And then, you know,
It it's
I
such a
have stuff in the works actually
oh,
that is very
okay.
similar along those lines. Actually, well, so being out in Germany, I made some friends at the ring and some driving instructors out there, and it's really kind of piqued my interest in circuit racing. So I'm actually
hmm.
going to there's Kelly Moss Racing that I've been talking with. They do Porsches, and there's a GT3 Mercedes team here in Statesville that I'm going to go meet with. Um, my old boss at RTR actually messaged me yesterday, like, "What are you doing? Can you come in tomorrow?" I'm like, "No."
Oh
But
man.
so I'm opening up the doors to little other forms of motorsport, and on top of that, I had an English teacher as an assignment every week write a journal entry, and she told me at the end of the semester to keep writing
Hmm.
because she is a firm believer that I can probably turn my experiences into a book one day. So I'm 100 pages into my journal, and who knows, maybe
Wow.
we'll have a, a book. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's such a weird environment, but kind of like we were talking about, like the restaurant environment versus like a crew on a car. Like when you have multiple people that have very specific and designated roles, but that have to, work together and then cross over those roles and stuff. Like there's all sorts of weird, potentially weird parallels to what you do and what a lot of other people do in completely seemingly left field industries.
I think that every person on this planet could learn some form of a really good life skill by working in motorsport, whether it's
Sure.
team building, organization, communication, problem solving, critical thinking, sequential reasoning. Like, it's just, there are so many things that I have learned in motorsport that I have been able to apply to my daily life, and like just anybody's, whether
Yeah.
if they're a fucking financial advisor or a construction work, like there's motorsport is available for everyone with any background. You know, I don't think a lot of people understand that, like, they might have a fascination with motorsport, but they don't know anything about it. Who cares? You like to crunch numbers? Go be an accountant. We need cooks. We have psychologists. We have physical therapists. We need HR people. We have people that literally just buy parts, do research, PR people, media, marketing. Like, there's a whole small town that travels as a team,
Yeah.
basically, But, we have people that literally are there to help facilitate if we need new uniforms while we're out away, to wash our work suits if we don't have enough time in between to wash them ourselves. Like there's a girl that works with us and she knows how to make her own clothes. And so she works in our store is what we call it, where we have all of our stuff. And she helps find which articles of clothing, like for example, in the North would probably work the best because she has this kind of knowledge, and event planners. Like if you like motorsport and you're afraid to get into motorsport because you don't know anything about cars, just do it anyways.
It takes everything. It takes every possible discipline to make it all happen. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Well, and did you have any idea you like cars, you start to find out that you like to work on cars, did you have any idea that you were going to learn so much from just doing like what seems like a very specific task of just mechanically working on cars? But it sounds like it has really you've taken way more from it than just a mechanical side of it.
Yeah, like I'm a firm believer that that's because of motorsport. Like as a dealership mechanic, and honestly, when I started this whole automotive journey, I was like, I'm gonna work at a dealership, work on cars, flag a bunch of hours, make some money, maybe build a race car on the side. Like I was happy with that, and then this whole new world opened up, and there's so many possibilities in motorsport. It's incredible. Whether you like to study fluid dynamics, magnets, the possibilities are just endless. It's so cool.
Yeah.
It's so cool. And that's why I'm trying to go to a different sport, because I want to learn more. Tell me more.
Well, and what it sounds like is now that you've had that experience, you've gone as far as you've gone, and you've learned what you've learned, there's no going back. It's like you cannot put that back and just go back. I'm gonna replace a water pump, and that's good enough. It sounds like now you want to explore all the different levels of what motorsports can do or can bring.
I would love to build a wild, crazy SEMA build with a motorsport theme, to be completely honest. I've had this idea in the back of my mind for about 5 or 6 years now. My husband even drew me up a rendering. And I really want to build this car for shows like SEMA. But like I said, with this motorsport kind of theme, because then you can go play with it too.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm really curious about that. What without giving away your intellectual property here of this cool idea you have, are we talking like a unchained rally car, or
an all around
do anything
race car? That was the idea, was to, okay, what can I build that I can go drag race with, autocross with, do some time trials with, what can I build to go fucking play in the dirt or the tarmac with, and
do it all well.
And I have found a drivetrain from a manufacturer where you can tap into the harness with a switch, simple on-off switch, and that will allow you to go from all-wheel drive to rear-wheel drive. And so for Joe Schmo, having a switch to do that is a lot easier than taking out some gearbox components and diff components.
Right.
So
it makes it very easy. It's pushing a button.
Yeah, it was kind of an inspiration behind a TV show that I was supposed to go do, and so that would be cool.
Yeah. Well, and so is there any of what you've done recently on these race cars that you think would be, maybe not from a technological standpoint, because a lot of the parts are just not going to be applicable, but to a street car, to a car that somebody could take from off an assembly line and build it up into something at SEMA, or that you would see at SEMA, but then that it could also race. Is there that much of a connection with the technology to what is out there kind of in the mass market, or at that pointy end of the racing spectrum, is it all just completely different and bespoke?
It's all different and like when you see Subaru Rally Team, I think
Yeah.
the only Subaru thing is the H pattern engine and like the logo.
Yeah.
Like seriously, like I had a girl reach out. Oh, I saw that you work for Hyundai and maybe you can help me. I'm like, I don't know anything about your road car. I'm so sorry.
Right.
Like, I mean, no, our gearboxes are not. There's
It's totally
nope.
different.
It's all
Yeah.
different. It's
Well,
all
like,
different.
and like especially in the rally world with the crazy travel that the suspension has to have, like the dampers, the geometry, like everything at that point is modified, different, unique. Yeah.
Mhm.
Would it feel limiting to actually work on a stock-based car? So like a regular privateer car that like it's an STI, but it really was an STI. It's not like an STI that had everything taken out of the middle and welded back in.
Right.
Would that be at all of interest to you or not? Because of how limiting
Yeah.
it would be.
No, it's because I love the sport. I love the sport. I love playing in the dirt and getting dirty and not feeling like a little prissy pants or something. Like that's what I love about rally, especially because like rally is known to be some of the world's toughest forms of motorsport. So I'm I figured if I can do that, then I can do anything. You know?
And I would say that that's probably entirely fair, 100%.
I know what you're getting at, John. Like I forget sometimes when I go to work on a normal Subaru that's not my hill climb car, how much like I've done to my car. And I'm like, oh shit, I totally forgot there's a whole section of shit in the way here to get to what I'm doing. And then
Yep.
Right.
I forget that like I've done a lot of work to make my car easier to work on, kind of thing.
Take a
Yeah,
lot of
well,
stuff off.
we
Yeah.
were putting Ben's motor in last night, and I'm used to like 15-minute like motor drops, and it took us like an hour and a half fighting it shots, fighting
Right.
this,
Yeah,
fighting
well,
that. I'm
and
like,
Right.
you
the
have
fuck?
the little cover for your fucking flywheel that you got to
Right.
bend out of the way and throw it
Right.
in there. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Yeah, we
Yeah.
tossed those bitches.
A couple key
Same.
bolt omissions and
That's
you know
weight savings.
a V band here and there, and the motor comes
Yeah.
out in a quarter of the time.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah, I
Yeah.
really appreciate not having air conditioning, not having all the emission stuff and all the shit in my GDs, because those things like they come in and out in like 15, 20 minutes. It's so fast. These new VAs, I mean, it's crazy how much shit is in
Is
them.
it?
It's insane.
Oh gosh, yeah. I think I quit working in a Subaru dealership back. Yeah, it was 2015.
Right
So
when
like
right when they came out.
anything, like the new what's that SUV thing that they have now? Oh, the
Ascent?
Ascent
Ascent.
or something.
Yeah.
Like I
Oh, you got to
know
replace all those
nothing
cup
about
holders.
those. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
about those.
Oh.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
So,
Man.
yeah, it's yeah, I miss working on like the older like the GD and GC chassis.
Well, you're welcome to
Much
come work
simpler.
on one if you want.
Yeah, there might be a few littered around these parts.
I'd
Yes.
be more than willing to let somebody
So
else work on my car for a while.
there's one back there that my husband's doing a metal wide body on. Then there's mine
cool.
that always needs fucking work.
Sick.
So
Yeah.
like I'm good.
Yeah.
Is he splitting the factory arch? Like, is it going to stay, factory kind of boxy style? Is he like splitting it, widening and welding in, or is he going full off the shelf with the panels, or what?
He's doing Garrett? Oh, you are here.
Yeah, get him on.
Garrett, come here. I met my husband because he was trying to sell me Subaru car parts. They have questions about the wide body. Here, come here.
There's not enough.
Yeah.
There's
He's
not
like,
enough
no.
wide body GCs.
Now the bonus section of the podcast.
Yes.
So we just heard that you're doing
Oh, hang on. You can't hear anybody?
Can you hear us
How
now?
about now?
hello. Yo quiero eat taco. Tacos
No,
para
nothing?
necesito trabajar.
Hang
Broken?
Oh, I might have hit a button.
Can you hear us now? Hello?
on. Boom, we're back. Aha!
This
back?
is some
Okay.
top level
Okay.
podcasting right here.
Okay. Sorry, guys. All right. hang
No,
on.
no, it's fine.
No,
Don't touch the side.
this is perfect.
Okay.
Probably like a Bluetooth headset. Oh
Oh
no.
no, they're going all the way now. Oh man. This is perfect bonus material, though. I'll tell
This
you
is
what.
perfect. Indeed. Indeed.
Yep, there's Ryan.
Can't hear you, Ryan. Can't hear you.
Like
Yeah, I
you're
was
both
just moving my mouth like a cartoon. I wasn't
It's
actually saying anything.
both muted and faking it.
He's not allowed. He's not allowed to do that.
Not allowed to do it.
Oh,
Okay.
Push
man.
that button.
Don't push the button. Peace. Shit.
Well, that's
okay.
okay.
So,
That's okay.
are we
All right,
recording
sorry.
still? Did we
Yeah.
totally just fuck that
Nope.
up? Or okay.
No, we're good.
All is good.
This is perfect.
Don't touch the button.
Put it on.
All right.
Okay.
Can you hear us?
Hello.
We
I
can hear you.
us. I can hear you.
Hey,
All right,
wonderful.
so first introduce yourself.
I'm Garrett Holler. Her wife. Her husband.
Significant
whatever
other. Yes.
That one.
Classic mix match.
Well, and she said you're building a wide body GC, and so of course there's not enough wide body GCs out there. We had to get the details. What are you doing?
Yeah, so this one will be a little different. This will be all steel.
Okay.
I like to play with steel. It's the way the original ones were made, and it is just an added challenge to it. So that's what I like. I built the first fender by memory, and when I got it done, I was like, I really want to make sure this is right. So I went out and I bought a really accurate replica fiberglass kit that I'll use as like a butt to build all of my steel panels off of,
Okay.
to ensure accuracy. And it's worked out really well because like I can get it really close off of those panels, and then I can really fine tune it in steel rather than the fiberglass.
So you're basically taking, sorry, just a flat piece of metal, and you're shaping it into the fender, like for each side. So you're having to basically develop a mirror and actually put it on the car and do all of that work.
Yep. I use like a factory fender, so like I'll create the wide body bulge, if you will,
Mhm.
and then I'll weld that to a factory fender. So
Okay.
when you open the hood and you look down into the fender, it'll say Subaru on it still.
Right. That's
and
very
all
cool.
of the insides look exactly like they should.
How challenging is that going to be on the rear for the rear quarter?
The rears are actually a lot easier. Because there's a lot more like space to work around where I would be welding it in. I can metal finish it out a lot easier. Whereas in the front fender, I've got the like where the corner light goes and stuff, that gets in the way. So I have to actually cut that out of the fender temporarily so I can metal finish it out and then weld it back in. So it's kind of a pain, but
not easy
it's
stuff.
a process. Oh yeah,
Sounds
I probably
awesome.
have like 30-40 hours in each corner. So
Whoa.
Man,
That's
yeah,
crazy.
pretty good.
it takes some time.
Is the car
Very
going to
cool.
be just a show car? Are you building it to run in a series, or?
This will be it'll be kind of like it'll definitely be more show. After all the hours I've put into it, I'm definitely not going to want to go and rally it down some gravel stage or something like that.
No, you don't want to spend 40 hours on a quarter just to fix a little thing.
Yeah. I figure
Makes
now.
sense.
And it's a 98 Acadia Green RS too. So
Oh,
I don't
that's a unicorn.
want to. Yeah. But the thing's been totaled out twice already. So I figured,
Wow.
you know what? We'll get it nice, and then I'll be able to just drive it. And
Man, well, you have to keep it that green forever. You
oh
realize
yeah,
that?
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. No, I'm 100% on board on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It can't change to any other color.
You
Yeah.
cannot change the color. That
Yeah.
is not
This is
allowed.
like, yeah, it's like my second car too. So I learned all of my mechanical stuff, like all of the principles of building cars off of this one car.
Yeah.
So if I were to change it to any other color, it wouldn't make sense.
No.
It wouldn't
No.
make sense.
And it's not allowed on Acadia Green.
Exactly. It's just not allowed. Yeah.
It's not
I
allowed.
think it's a amendment to the Constitution. Actually, I think I read that somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's in
69th
there.
Amendment.
59.
Yeah, something like that.
It's in there. Very cool. Well, thanks for letting us in on all that you're doing.
Yeah,
And
no problem.
you've got
No problem.
I don't know, just drop us a line. We've got like picture or some done stuff? Because yeah, there's so many people that are going crazy with GCs now, and I'm sure people just love to see what you're up to.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you very much. I'll try not to hit another button here.
Okay. Yes.
Nice to meet you guys. Have a good one.
Yes. Thanks, sir.
Bye.
Voila.
Very cool. All right, you can hear us. We're all good.
Yes.
Excellent. Wonderful.
Does those things have like just gigantic buttons? It's like all a button.
No, they're sensitive on the side.
So you can like
and they're little tiny ones right on the back. So like
Mhm.
right where you want to grab it, you know?
Yeah. There you go.
Giggity.
Yeah. Nice. Well, Heather, it's a little over an hour. You've taken up a lot of your time. Thank you very much for
I
coming
got
on.
one more.
For
I
sure.
got one more question
Okay,
I want to
do
ask.
it.
Yes.
Let's
Okay.
go for it.
Favorite tool?
A straight edge.
Really?
Like a
Yes.
true like engineer straight, or
Like
just like a nice.
a straight edge with the ruler.
Okay.
Yes, because that is how you get your good suspension setups,
Sure. Yeah.
and you can use it to find bent pieces,
Oh,
bent arms. I
Yeah.
actually used to carry in my toolbox a very small like piece of like square stock.
Huh.
And I would, if something looked a little bent, I would actually like just put that, because I knew that was flat. So I would put that up or straight. And so I could put that on an arm or something, and you can
see.
have a better idea if it's bent or not.
It's all about perspective, right?
Yep.
Cool.
You guys know
Thanks.
about those bent suspension parts there, huh, John? Just
A little bit.
recently.
Oh no!
Yeah. Yeah. Our rally car was up at a hill climb with Tasso, and our driver hit something, and the suspension compressed, and it's still compressed. It's like it's jammed up, and it's a very old RS&SP suspension that like they got bought by another company, and I don't know if we're going to be able to get it fixed, but we'll find out.
And then he
Oh,
took my
no.
slightly less bent JVAB and put
Yeah.
that on the car.
I kind of like
Slightly less.
that rally
Slightly
stance
less.
look, though. That was a pretty sick look, dude.
Yeah.
You guys were like
Uh,
tucking gravels. You know, that
Yeah.
could be like a thing. Like,
See, that's
tucking
kind of like,
gravel.
yeah. I want to
Yeah.
do like a gravel setup on my Subaru, and then I want to buy an AE86 and like do a low and slow vibe with that.
Uh-huh.
You know.
Yeah.
Although looking for like cruise Google for images of gravel like WRC cars just totally laid out, like bottoming out off a jump or something like that. I have a whole list. Every time I see one, I screenshot the picture because man, they look, and the way those cars
It's
can
cool,
tuck
huh?
too. Oh man. Ugh.
Yeah. It's
Jealous of
crazy.
your up travel. Like all the parts of a WRC car about
Crazy.
the up travel. Like I'm jealous of
I
that.
think suspension travel is like my most fascinating thing
Mhm.
with cars. I got to hang out for a Baja event. I was in a chase truck for a trophy team, or a trophy truck team. And you're in this truck next to the trophy truck, you know, and like the
Yeah.
suspension travel is
Yeah.
so cool. It's so cool.
Yep,
Without
I'm with
getting
you.
into too many details, I mean, can you give us an idea of what, maybe just an overall perspective of how they set up the geometry so that they can get so much travel out of a tiny little car? Because it's like these rally cars, it's unreal how much droop they have and how much like compression. Because isn't it like 16 inches, 18 inches of travel that they're getting out of these things now?
It's a shitload.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
it's a lot. Well, at least on like a gravel and like a snow setup. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's a lot. And I think they just kind of try to figure out the dimensions and based on a lot of like, you know, you have certain points that you have to keep on these chassis. So I wonder if that limits some of that, and maybe
Sure.
the engineers have to work around this as well. And then they probably also have previous data of like, this is how long
Yeah.
this
How
traveled
much?
at this race last event, and like on average this is the longest travel we saw last year, so maybe we need to at least be able to accommodate. I'm not exactly sure, honestly, how the engineers decide and how they come up with this stuff, but I would imagine that they are limited on
Yeah.
the
Just
the
the
points
pickup
on the
points on the
car that you
car.
have to keep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have like I don't know if I can ask this. Did you have various different like lower arms and knuckles that would go for like tarmac stage is going to be this lower arm and this knuckle. It's like I said, it's a snow stage, so it's going to be this lower arm and this knuckle. Like they would go as like sets that maybe has to do with how the travel is set up.
We do, but it's more of like per rally, not per stage.
okay.
Because for the most part, when you have a snow rally, everything's on the snow. They have like we call them Mickey Mouse stages. They're just for show. So like even if it's a gravel event, you will have to drive on the tarmac for that stage, but you have to still use your gravel tires. You can't put tarmac tires on. So like it's more of like an event thing. So yeah, I mean, like every team has it. You know, they have different lengths and settings for tarmac, gravel, snow, whatever. And there's usually certain combinations. Like if we run this one, then we need to run these arms with this upright or whatever. You know?
Right.
So
it's like
it's a pretty common thing.
They're all setups. Like so, this is like the tarmac knuckle, tarmac control arm, tarmac strut, and you keep them all together.
There's
and there's like there's even like parts on the car that we have to put in like for example, like on like wet rallies in the dirt or even snow, we will put in like wheel scrapers.
Right.
You know, but we don't need wheel scrapers for tarmac. So there's certain things even inside the car too that you will have for certain surfaces.
Right.
There's a cool video cruising around YouTube. I forget what the event is, but it was mixed surface. So it's like gravel one day, tarmac the next, and they allowed an extra long service at night to allow the switch of damper and suspension setups. And there's a video of the full switch of the car, and it's amazing. Like the diffs come out, they change. The transmission comes out, it changes. Guards on the front of the car, aerodynamic pieces in the engine, the different speeds and cooling requirements, the brake cooling systems and stuff like that. Like it's a good video. I mean, I swear
it's pretty cool.
YouTube is like the greatest for looking at service.
It's pretty awesome. I can't remember what rally it is. But they used to have one that was a mixed surface event. Shit, I wish I remembered. Because then at least people can go Google it easier.
Right. That actually made me think of something I forgot to ask Heather. So when you're going from one rally, like the cars come off a rally, you have so many number of days, and you're going to the next event. How far down do you take the car apart and go through everything to get it ready for the next event? Like how?
I think only thing, for the most part, the only thing that really stays are like some of the hard line, like brake lines inside the cockpit and the harness.
Hard brake lines in the car and the wiring harness. And everything else comes out and is inspected. Wow. And what is, I mean, I can guess the motivation for that, but can you kind of explain, like in that process, coming off a rally, getting ready for the next rally, like what is the goal? What is the, like, what are you?
Sometimes you're lucky enough to have a spare chassis sitting waiting, so you can get a head start on this build. But a lot of a rebuild after an event is cleaning, and people are like, "What the hell? Why?" And it's because when you clean everything, you find damage or cracks, shit like this, and so that's why everything needs to come out of those cars. Like we'll even. Like if you have a known spot that likes to crack, you got to pull back some of like the heat protections and have a look and see, there's you're literally in charge directly of two people's lives in these cars. And then because of the sport, you have spectators at risk as well. And so you have to make sure that everything is what it needs is perfect, and it's just cleaning. Like cleaning is a huge part of being a motorsport mechanic. It's a huge part.
That's what I'm doing today.
It's mostly cleaning, like honestly. Yeah.
That's wild.
It's just cleaning.
Today is my clean and check day before the next event.
Yeah. And you want to do like a white or a light gray interior so you can see the cracks in the paint, not some fancy paint matched cage to your Sedona red Subaru or whatever.
So I'm getting called out here. I'm saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
He has a Sedona.
I have a San Remo red Subaru I painted the cage red. I know the fundamentals of you should paint your inside something you can see, like a Napa chassis gray or a white. Don't worry.
I only said that because I'm trying to get one off of my buddy, and it's a beautiful build, and he never drives it, and it's got a full cage, but he doesn't really race it too much. So I'm like, well, I'd probably just drive it around like daily when I'm on the West Coast or something. So in theory, I won't need to crack check the cage a lot. So that's where I got that idea from. My bad.
No.
Okay. I knew exactly what I was getting into when I painted my cage that color. And it's one of the more common things I get is, why do you buy such expensive tires and why isn't your cage white? Because I want to. All right, leave me alone.
Yeah.
I mean, I could struggle with the white cage. I already feel like the glare off of my blue cage is enough to like just be obnoxious.
Put black on that part. I mean, I
that's why
haven't done that for mine, but
like the glare guards.
That's why you see it black.
Yep. Wild.
Yep.
Very
all right,
cool.
fine. So maybe you don't get this.
No.
Cancel the episode.
That's how I feel with my damn cage all the time.
We're done. Look out.
Well, no. Hey, before we wrap it up, I do have one more question for you, Heather. And I don't know if there's a story here, but I wanted to ask because I noticed that on your Instagram account, the link that you have is to the Jessie Combs Foundation. Yes. And I just wanted to see if you could, well, first just explain what that is, and just if there is kind of like a story behind that, just say what that is.
I would love to. Oh my God. Okay. So the Jessie Combs Foundation, you guys know who Jessie Combs is? Okay.
But
so
maybe
for those listening that don't
yes.
know, Jessie was a WyoTech student that got picked up for like some TV shows, and she's basically just been this huge staple of women in the automotive industry. And she's been on Overhaul, and she's streamed 4x4, and she actually has the world land speed record for world's fastest woman. Unfortunately, she died doing this, and it was actually, I think, 3 days before I got married, so that was cool. Wow. But Jessie was actually a big reason why I decided to go to mechanic school, because I liked it, but I was fucking terrified. You know, there was like one girl for every like 2,000 dudes. I didn't even know how to change my brakes when I went to school.
Okay.
And so she was a big push for me, just being like, you know what? This girl can do it. She's doing cool shit. She's younger than me, I believe, or at least looks like it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to fucking do it. So after Jessie passed away, they started a scholarship foundation, the Jessie Combs Foundation, to help educate and send girls to trade schools or automotive related, more trades stuff focused than anything. And I was part of the first class of scholarship winners for the Jessie Combs Foundation.
That's awesome.
So I won a scholarship, and that's what paid for my first semester of school. And it's kind of crazy. Like I always looked up to this woman. You know, I met her at SEMA, and it's a really nice place and group to be part of, because yes, you know, like there's women in the field. We're there, like, but there is a weird, I'm trying to find the right word, environment maybe, that we still do deal with sometimes. You know, we are still ladies. We still like to wear high heels and makeup, and we still like to post bikini photos on social media because it makes us feel good. And sometimes I think that because of this, it's just, you know, we're girls. That's what we like to do. You know, I think that it's seen as maybe not accepted in the workplace or in the industry. And so, I mean, I have recently actually talked to a lot of women who have experienced a lot of this kind of attention-seeking accusations, I guess, and it's just really it's kind of disheartening. You know, we're told to be taking our jobs more seriously, and I'm like, I'm just trying to hang out at the beach and say, look, and I'm at the beach, you know. So it's nice being part of a group that you can relate to, you know. I mean, and they have really, if they will put as much effort into you as you put into them. So you can literally receive a scholarship, say thank you for the money, and then fuck off. Like that's fine, because the foundation, they just want to be there and support ladies in the industry. Like that's the main thing, you know. But we have like monthly phone calls and check-ins with each other just to see what kind of bullshit we're doing. You know, there's been times where some of the girls have had a terrible time at work, quit their jobs. We found her another job, moved her somewhere else. Like it's a really cool foundation to be part of. Any of the ladies that have won, they will help get them to like Sturgis to be part of the group, or SEMA, and so it's not just a scholarship opportunity.
It's like it's a community.
It's a community. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's
Do you,
really cool. Yeah.
And you said, you know, women are reaching out to you. Have you seen a kind of, I mean, obviously you're part of this. Is there like a big, a growing interest in that direction?
I think so. For me though, I just kind of feel bad because like, you know, of course, like car dudes, they want a fucking car, girl, you know, and like sometimes like they're just not into it, you know, and sometimes I feel like these girls kind of like get forced and like dragged to these car meets, and then they end up resenting the cars, and then they don't even want to be there. And like, so for me, you know, it's kind of like the nature of the beast, you know, us ladies, it's not necessarily an environment that we all want to fucking work in, and that's fine.
Right.
But I think it has, I think there are more women that are not as intimidated, I think, to enter the field, and I think that's what's important. So,
would you say that it's becoming? Sorry, go ahead.
When I started tech school, I never had another female in my class, and by the time I ended, I think it was like the last 6 months of school, I would have at least 1, 2, and sometimes even 3 other ladies in my classes. So like, that was really cool to me. I still have yet to work with another female mechanic though, but it would be really cool.
It'll give it a little time, and it's going to happen. And would you say that, like, is it? I think that there's been a barrier for women to show an interest to a certain extent. Like you're saying, like some people just would go to a car meet and not be interested. But I think there's other people that I've talked to through the years where like there was maybe a hesitation to really show how interested they legitimately were in cars or motorsport or something like that. It be from a very serious standpoint. But I think that maybe that's lessening a little bit.
I think so. I would like to think so. I mean, like M Sport, they have a chassis mechanic over there, a lady chassis mechanic, you know, and like I'm actually really trying to work with M Sport so I can just work with another female mechanic.
Sure.
But I see more and more ladies in the industry, and like that makes me feel really good, because I think it's not necessarily important to like be like, you should do this. It's like, we are here if you want to.
Yeah. If you have the interest, you should be able to follow it and follow that to whatever end it might be.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, those role models are really important too. I mean, I say this obviously not with my own direct experience being a female in an industry like that. But,
what?
But my wife, surprisingly. But my wife has worked in male-dominated fields for most of her professional life, including like wildland firefighting, which is extremely type A masculine stuff like that. But she had a female role model to look up to and to look out for her and to say, look, you're going to get this shit from these guys. You got to just keep your head down, do it. Or here's techniques that I've used to do that.
Where are you located?
Colorado.
Ah, shit, that's right. Okay.
Yeah, Rollin, Colorado.
Because my aunt was the first fire captain or chief or whatever of her firehouse. I don't know what the technical terms are. I'm sorry, but like, but yeah, she fucking drove the truck and everything.
That's awesome.
So,
it's still, but it's, I mean, like awareness for the issues, and I know I'm walk shaky ground as a dude trying to high horse this too much or something like that, right? But just awareness for these issues are still such a thing, both the female motorsports thing, and also, there's still an undercurrent of racism in a lot of motorsports and stuff like that. So, awareness for stuff like that and role models and support networks and stuff like that, I think are really, really amazing. And, I followed Jessie's career from the Power Block TV stuff and became a fan because she seemed to just be genuinely into it and not be
Yeah.
afraid to just march to her drum and say, oh, you don't like what I'm doing? All right, well then don't be a part of it. I'm gonna go do it. And I thought
Yeah,
that was
dude, that just gave me the goosebumps. That's so fucking cool.
yeah,
That's
Yeah.
that's exactly
that was
what
I
she
mean
did.
Yeah.
I remember hearing the horrible news, and I thought to myself what a loss that was for the motorsport industry at that point. And
Yeah.
Her death was the first and only celebrity death that I actually felt any sort of. I mean, I fucking cried. I mean, like I think this is the first time I've actually talked about her where I haven't just like started crying. So it's it is important because there was a point there where I was starting to get frustrated for being recognized for being like a female mechanic,
right.
and I actually reached out to. You guys know who Bogey is? She's got the all girls garage on Motor Trend.
Oh.
Anyways,
I'll go. Yeah, I think so.
you got Bogey and Faye. But anyways, I spoke with Bogey one day and I was expressing to her like I just want to be like recognized for being a mechanic instead of a female mechanic, and I'm being offered all of these opportunities because I'm a female mechanic, but like how do I navigate this situation? And she's like, you know what? Like I understand what you're feeling because you want to be, respected for your skills and not your vagina. But the fact of the matter is that there are still there's a lot of girls that are still denied these opportunities, and not blatantly, but they might not get hired because they're like, well. So she told me, take every fucking opportunity that you can because there's a lot of girls that are denied it. And so I think like that's how I've actually really embraced being part of like the Jessie Combs Foundation and like being someone I'd like to think that people can look up to, but more of like a support person, like 'cause there is still some
Yeah.
shit and it sucks to deal with, but
For
having
sure.
you're right. I think having like some sort of a support system is
Well,
very nice.
and I mean, maybe just to build on that is like to take an opportunity and then run with that opportunity. And it might not be something that's publicized. It might not be something that many people see, but somebody's going to see it. Some little girl somewhere is going to see some part of that. There's a reasonable chance, and it's just like the more opportunities there are for girls that are growing up to see all these possible opportunities. It just you're breaking down that mental barrier a little bit at a time. Just even being present, doing what you do.
So
breaking down stereotypes too. The better
Yeah.
you are at it, the more wrong that people get to be.
Right.
there you go. Like you let your work prove them wrong. That's
Yep.
fantastic. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's for sure. But like we were in Kenya for the rally, and I made a friend, and she was telling me that the reason why people are so fascinated with me being in the service area as a mechanic is because apparently the women there, they're expected to have babies and mind their husbands, and you know what I mean? Like there's actually a very high death rate of spousal deaths.
Wow.
And because women, if they are looked at as divorcing their husbands, they are no wanted. They're looked like as prostitutes and whores, and so they would rather almost be willing to like risk their life than being labeled like that. So,
Right.
do you guys know Ari Vatanen?
Yes.
He's like, yeah. So he actually fucking came up to me during this rally and like introduced himself to me, shook his hand. He's like, I'm Adi. I'm like, I fucking know who you are.
Wow.
But he's like, my wife and I were watching you, and we just want to say that we think it's so cool having a female here. I was just over at Toyota wondering where the ladies were, and then I come to Hyundai, and boom, there you are. Like, cool, thanks.
Wow.
So like, it's I what was an eye opener for me is like, even though here in my town it's motorsport central, there's women that do it everywhere, but like with social media nowadays, you never really realize who you might be affecting and being like an influence on. So like
Yeah.
that meant a lot to me to be
Well,
there and do that.
that's amazing. And just like with World Rally, going to so many countries, I mean, and running races in countries where there's so many different cultures, like that's something that's unusual, and that's awesome. You're again like just being there. You're making your presence known, and you're changing some of those perceptions. That's very cool.
Yeah, that's pretty neat.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, now we're coming up on 2 hours, so I really
Oh my
need to
God, I'm
thank
so
you.
sorry. We need to get
No.
the hell out of here.
Yes, we
Okay.
I need
I mean,
to
like,
thank
I
you.
don't, but you guys might need, you
No.
probably have shit to do, huh?
I need to go check my car. I need to go check
Yes.
my horribly
You gotta-
painted cage for cracks now.
Gotta go
That's right.
clean it.
Yes.
Gotta go clean my red cage.
But it is time
Sorry.
very well spent, and thank you so much for making the time and coming on chatting with us, and that is an awesome note to end on. And
Oh yeah, cool.
so I just want to thank everybody for listening. Thanks for your support as always, and until next time, stay tuned to Flatirons Tuning, and follow Heather on Instagram and social media. Keep up with what she's doing, Dussex and Tasso, whichever side they end up being on, whatever. Yes. Well, thanks so much, and
Thank you.
yeah, we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks everyone for tuning in to the Flatiron Syndicate Motorsports Podcast. Once again, we'd like to let you know that your support is what makes this show possible. Be sure to check out our online store at flatironstuning.com for any of your aftermarket or OEM Subaru parts needs. And as always, stay tuned with Flatirons Tuning.